I, Paul Diffley, hereby reconvene the Board of Education special meeting in open session at 5 p.m. The clock's wrong, but it's, never mind, it's 5 p.m. as far as I'm concerned. Please note that this meeting is being both recorded and live streamed for public viewing. We have a quorum present with all board members in attendance. This is the usual stuff. At this time, the governing board welcomes public comments pursuant to Education Code 35145.5, public comment. Yeah. Say again.
You do the Pledge of Allegiance first?
Well, I'll do this one then. What's here? As a reminder, governing board meetings are a business meeting of the board held in public, and although public participation is encouraged, it is not the public's meeting. It's the duty of the board president and or clerk of the board to maintain an orderly, respectful, and peaceful meeting. Oh, wouldn't that be nice? Where all perspectives, voices, and opinions are welcome. Please refrain from speaking out while another person has the floor. At the appropriate time on the agenda, individuals wishing to provide public comment on items appearing on the agenda will be called upon one at a time to do so in accordance with Board Bylaw 9323. The board cannot and will not respond to non-agendized items, but a staff member will reach out to you on matters that may need to be reviewed as appropriate. No action was taken during the closed session conference with legal counsel regarding potential litigation. Linda, would you offer to help us with flag suit? Please stand.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming. Item D3, approval of the agenda, calls for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passed. Item D4, public comment regarding meeting agenda items. We've already read the president's remarks. Let's see.
Okay, the first person is Greg Langworthy,
Greg Langworthy.
followed by Yvonne Munoz. I can do it for you, so you don't.
That's great.
It's easier. Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Welcome.
Good to be here. So I have taught in public schools, taught in private Christian schools, taught in community school where they had the law enforcement, the sheriff kind of in the back room with a gun, taught severely handicapped kids. So I've had experience in a variety of schools, but bottom line in all of them is discipline. And it's always a first priority. You can't teach anything if the kids are getting out of their seats or bothering other kids. So it is really a priority for all kids to learn to respect each other, to learn to respect authority. My mother taught me this with her wooden spoon, and so then I had to figure out how to do this in schools as well. So there has to be consequences. So a couple principles. You train a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he won't depart from it. So you realize that in middle school, kids are kind of out of control, and little by little, they have to be trained to sit in their seats, to pay attention, not to bother other kids. And you do that with clear consequences. And this is where the whole school comes in. I found out that in successful schools, they've got clear rules. They've got principals that'll stand behind you when you discipline the kids. And you have consistency. You know, you can't let a kid consistently get away with things. And I'll give you another principle that I found very important. Strike a mocker, and the simple will learn wisdom. What does that mean? Well, if you got a kid that's scornful and is always disobeying, you have to deal harshly with that kid. Because if you don't, the other kids are going to follow in his footsteps. They'll just, oh, John got away with it, I can get away with it. And that was one of the most important things I learned, was that if a kid is scornful and mocking, you really do have to deal with them harshly for the good of the rest of the kids. And then one last thing is, I think the principle of transparency is very important. When I was in school, I would have let parents come into my class, talk to me, tell me their problems, their issues. But I'd never hid what I did in class because I was proud of what I did. And that's one thing I think is a great principle for Murrieta, is encourage parents to come see, President Diffley, you've done that a number of times, encouraging parents to come see what the school is doing, but not only extracurricular activities, but in the classroom, see what the teachers are doing. So, and that's one request I have. I'd really like to get a tour of some of these schools, some of the classrooms. I represent a lot of parents at our church, and that transparency, I think, would give them confidence that you guys are doing a good job. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So after,
Dr. Andrews,
okay.
could we maybe arrange for a,
Yeah, I'll make a note of that and see what we can do specific to Mr. Langsworthy's request, but also maybe some other faith-based leaders, because I think that was in that context. Well, I'll talk with Mr. Langsworthy.
perfect, thank you.
After Yvonne is Emily Brooks.
Welcome.
Hi. So first, the children of our city aren't dogs to be trained. They are human beings. And at the start of this school year, there was roughly 7.3 million students in the public educational system who qualified for some form of special education services. It's estimated that 1 in 5 of these students in schools are neurodivergent or have some neurodivergent mental differences in how they know, experience, and navigate their world, such as differences in how they learn, feel, perceive, and socialize. Whether it's the result of a lack of proper training or a lack of experience in public educational settings like Ms. Vandergriff, who homeschooled all of her children, or a desire to provoke or inflame passionate hearts like Mr. Purdue, who claps at the frustrations expressed in the last session by a professor who was exacerbated by a situation. The students are not taking instructional time away from others. And for anybody to make that statement in our public education setting is taking an ableist position that risks alienating a large body of our students and further miscategorizing a student's actual needs as a behavioral challenge needing discipline or training instead of a triggering event to reevaluate a student's IEP or the model of instruction. Setting neurodivergent students up for success begins by accepting that they are who they are, and that comparing them to other students or what we think a good student should be is not the right approach. The picture of good learning and what that looks like in a classroom has long been a legacy upheld by ableist, neuronormative patterns of behavior. Sitting in a chair still with both hands and feet on the floor, looking forward, not fidgeting, does not equate to how a student learns. Neither does finishing problems in a designated time frame or being able to fit your thinking into a little box at the bottom of a worksheet or an exam. Neurodivergent students do not need disciplined or to be forced to learn differently in the archaic way that we used to force left-handed students to be right-handed students. Our public schools need to learn how to educate differently so that all students have an opportunity to succeed. Let's equip our educators in these endeavors instead of framing them with inflammatory and segregationist ideas and applause.
Emily Brooks. Okay. And that's our last comment card.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Diffley?
Yes.
Just as a point of order, if the comment card is complete, I'd have to review our policy really quick, but if the person arrives, they can give a public comment at the end of the meeting,
Great,
if that takes place.
Okay.
yeah, if you see her, that'd be
I'll
good.
flip it over so we don't forget.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Point of order. I've given the board members a couple of articles that I've found. I don't know if you got them down to that end. I'll pass them down. Okay. Sorry. A couple of pages. One is entitled "No Excuses. Can a Return to Traditional Discipline Save Public Schools?" And the other one is "A Day at Columbus Collegiate Academy." Just reference material that I thought might help with what we're doing. I also had the pleasure on watching 60 Minutes of Academy, and this is related to what we're talking about, of an academy in southern Louisiana, all girls, all African Americans, everyone graduated, everyone graduates every time. And the vast majority of them get scholarships. And many get scholarships plus athletic scholarships. And it's not because it's a Catholic school, and it's not because the nuns whack their hands with rulers. That's not done. But I think that it might be good to spend some research time looking at schools that are doing well in certain areas and not just discipline. Good schools are not just the property of California. They're the property of the United States, and there's a lot of schools in different places that we could learn from. So that's something I'd like everybody to think about, but thank you for listening. Okay. Item E, consent calendar items are voted on collectively as a group. Upon board member request, items may be removed from the consent calendar for discussion and individual action. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar items E through E5 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes. F1, presentation, student discipline policies. Mr. Ryan Tuca, Executive Director of Student Report, will speak with us.
Good evening, Board of Education and Community. Tonight, I'll be presenting on everyone's favorite topic, discipline.
Excuse me.
So I think it's important to begin this conversation by stating the first priority of schools is to create a safe learning environment for students to learn and staff to educate. Expectations of appropriate behavior play a critical role in the safety of our schools and the ability for our staff to meet the educational needs of students. I'm going to review some basic principles of Ed Code as it relates to discipline, the legislative changes that I'm sure many of you guys are aware of, and the ways in which student discipline is enforced. Additionally, and most importantly, I will share with you the systems being implemented at our sites to support growth in the area of student discipline. All right, maybe. Nope. All right, there we go. So the legal basis for student discipline. Education Code Section 48900 sets forth the scheme for which suspensions and expulsions can take place. Some of 48900 do not allow suspensions, and that's something that I'll touch base on, right? That used to exist that no longer do in terms of changes. There's also district board policies, administrative regulations implemented in Education Code, which you guys have a part in terms of supporting and creating for our school district. And then lastly on this is education is a fundamental right in California, right? Due process required by the U.S. and California constitutions and case law is incorporated into Education Code procedures. And so I think one of the things is to mention with this as it relates to students with disabilities, students on IEPs, and some of their protections as it relates to discipline and their equal access to inclusion. So legislative changes. I'm sure most of you guys are aware of this. This gets asked to me a lot, whether I'm working or out of work. what does this mean, right? How is Assembly Bill 420, Senate Bill 419, and the implementation of it July 1st, 2020 for kindergarten through 8th grade, and then just July 1st for 9th through 12th grade. Not allowing suspension or expulsion for violation K, which is defiance and disruption. I'll touch base on that a little later in my presentation in terms of who has the opportunity and rights to suspend for defiance and disruption. But that definitely has been something that's changed the way that student discipline can legally be implemented. I will tell you that when the Assembly Bill in 2013, probably 2016, right, the establishment, it became pretty normal to not use violation K, right? Everyone knew this was coming down the pipeline. So like it being implemented in July 1st for not being able to use violation K, that's not a big change because it really hadn't been used. There were some isolated occasions, but it was already enforced for K through 8. And so there was already, I would say, other methods, other means of correction for minor defiance and disruption. That aligned with SB 419, and this is kind of where it all comes together, right? Principals are encouraged, district officials, staff, to provide alternatives to suspension or expulsion using a research-based framework with strategies that improve behavioral and academic outcomes that are age-appropriate and designed to address and correct the pupil's specific misbehavior. A lot of you guys have heard of PBIS, right? Now it's MTSS. I think what is unique about MTSS, we currently have 2 tiers, right? The tier 1 is implemented across all sites, and tier 2 is something that we're implementing this year. We just finished our training for tier 2 with our elementary staff yesterday. That's the last one for the year. Our upper grades were last week, but tier 2 is focused on attendance structures, right? That's the goal and one of the initiatives for this year. And attendance, being at school, helps kids learn the systems, right? Be engaged, be more successful. The more successful kids are, academically, then they're going to have better success behaviorally as well. So that's one of our goals this year, and that's a new modality of the tier of the MTSS being implemented. As it relates to MTSS Tier 1, the focus of MTSS is creating expectations. Right? I'm going to use that term a couple times because creating expectations for behavior at each site and then having those consistently implemented is the key. There's no doubt that we are receiving, all schools, more students that are coming into elementary without some of the skill sets that are sometimes necessary to be learning at the levels that we want them to be learning at. MTSS is critical for that, right? For that all staff are modeling the same behaviors, that there's pictures, there's charts, right, that are academically appropriate. And so every single site is creating their MTSS model of the expectations they want to see in the classroom and they want to see outside the classroom. But the key to multi-tiered systems of supports is for students to learn at higher levels. And I think that's kind of the movement, right? A PBIS, positive behavior, that's great. But the thing that is great about MTSS, it's sustainable. It's focused on supporting growth, right, inside the classroom to allow more kids to learn at higher levels. One of the things that's been added into an avenue of MTSS is it's called Playworks, right? It's seen at the elementary. I know you guys all go to schools. Kids were coming in specifically after COVID. They did not grow up at the playground or the park, right? I don't think we realized how important it was. I mean, I was blessed that my kids, I could go to the park, they could play with other kids, they could learn how to get along. We got a group of students who didn't get that opportunity. And in the last couple years post-COVID, kids didn't know how to play. And so the unstructured time on the playground became one of the biggest crutches to kids learning inside the classroom because of what was happening. If you go to the elementaries and you see the Playworks working, you're seeing adults that have been taught how to teach kids how to interact with each other, play games, And the report from the principals of the elementary, I just met with them a couple days ago, their behaviors outside the classroom because of unstructured time are almost gone. They are still seeing the behaviors in the class, so I'm not ignoring that. But I will say that Play Works is having a great impact. That's one of those things from MTSS.
Yeah, I think I need you to slow down. Playworks, I wasn't sure if you were supporting unstructured playtime or you were saying unstructured playtime was problematic.
So the unstructured playtime at recess, when it was just kind of the old school, hey, there's balls over here, you guys want to play, was causing problems, right? So they are providing more structures to teach kids how to then be able to play without the structures. Like, this is how you play a game. This is what happens when you're frustrated. You don't throw the ball at each other. And so, you know, the teaching of the skills and teaching of what games to play, because they really were unaware of how do you engage with each other when you're out on a playground. They're seeing a lot of growth in terms of kids just building the social, emotional, behavioral skills.
So a really good example that I've heard given to me as I visit these and watch this play out is in the past, kids would say, run out and play tag, right? Because kids like to play tag. It's a fun game. We all played it, right? But when you haven't had like rules or structure how to do that, a little one could lose control of their body because they're little and they trip, and then before you know it, someone thought they were hit, but there was just like an out of control tag, right? So rather than do that, Playworks is like, let's go play sharks and minnows, which is a version of tag, but it's got some lines and some rules, and they learn to play it together, and they're still playing the game of tag, but it's just not run amok. And so it's provided a little more structure and organization, and that has been, I've heard that more than one occasion, what you shared, is that we're seeing what used to happen on the playground would carry over into the classroom, and we're seeing that just almost completely gone. It doesn't mean there aren't other things in the classroom, but the carryover from playgrounds after recess into the classroom is greatly diminished.
It's just an identified need post-COVID, right? Of maybe something people don't think about. We always think about learning loss, but it's the basic structure of how to get along with each other and how to do things without, you know, maybe potentially hurting each other.
I have a question about Playworks. So is that a framework or is it a service that we pay for, or what is that?
That's a framework, right?
Playworks is actually a company that has developed these games, and we paid for the initial training from Playworks, from the company. They came out and introduced all the games and taught. It was a select group, and then our staff has taken it to the next level, of course. So we've taken a lot of what they taught us, and we're kind of like reproducing it the Murrieta way, but the same concept of these distinct games and teaching. And one of the things that we've heard for a long time is some of our classified staff not getting the support they need to be successful in their roles. And so this is training playground aides in how to run these. It's running games, and it's also classroom management for the playground, if you will, and how to be successful in helping kids be managed out there.
So it's something that we implemented in some time in the past and paid for training, and now we're on our own now?
Yes.
Is that kind of,
And do you anticipate the need for that going down as kids come in with more social skills?
I am going to say, while it is while it is true that this is a need post-COVID, I was a principal pre-COVID, and I can tell you that 90% of what I dealt with was playground issues, and I mean, a long time conversation as teachers being frustrated with how much comes into their classrooms that they're then taking the first 15, 20 minutes trying to resolve who's mad at who and who's not getting along after recess. So it's really, I think it's going to be a universal need in terms of supporting effective playground time. Is that what you were going to say?
I just want to make sure that there weren't any questions. I'm elementary director. It's actually been pretty outstanding. The program is, like Ms. Muchnick shared, we trained a school site. It was actually Murrieta Elementary because they were particularly without a playground for that year, and so it really supported them. It really caught on, and so at this point we're rolling it out at all 11 elementary schools, What's unique is, and like Mr. Tukwa shared, kids used to play in the street and they'd go play games, and these games were passed down almost generationally as kids played outside. Kids are coming onto the playground without that background knowledge. What this does is it explicitly teaches those playground games that you guys all grew up playing, but now we're showing students how to play that. So they have all this equipment, so now they know how to use it. So often you walk our playgrounds, you'll see all the painted lines everywhere, the Foursquare lines, the hopscotch lines. Most students don't know what to do with those, especially this generation of kiddos that grew up when had that hiatus of coming on campus. So now, I also want to, I think, Mr. Purdue, you mentioned just about choice. Did you ask about that? Just kids are not required to play each of these games, so there's still choice involved if they choose which one they want to play, or they can just do free play. And so, but these games are much more popular than free play.
So I've been doing some reading on this, and one of the terms that I've heard is bunker babies. The babies who were born in 2020 and forward for the next 4 years, and we're going to see them now in TK and then in kindergarten next year. And that they were raised in a home with 2 loving parents, of course, and maybe some family visiting, but they maybe had some siblings. But other than that, I mean, I know if I'd had a baby in 2020, I wouldn't have taken it to the grocery store. And, you know, before that, my kids, I hauled them everywhere with me. And they just didn't get, these babies maybe did not get some of the social interactions, facial cues, behavioral cues, and how to play with other kids. Is that what you're seeing?
Definitely. I think at the elementary level, a lot of kiddos that would have gone to the park, their local neighborhood park, some parks were closed during that time. So even for families that were like, let's go down to the park, that wasn't available. And so we have this generation of kiddos that are in our schools that missed out on those opportunities. And so this program has just been, but like Ms. Muchnick shared, this is something that's not unique to right now. We noticed this prior.
Okay.
To COVID, it is something that you'd go to pick up your classroom, and we have some teachers who now, it's like you'd go to pick them up and they would inundate you with all the problems that happened at recess before you just, hey, this person said this and they took the ball from me, and what this does is it really eliminates that, allows the teacher to focus on teaching.
Awesome. Thank you.
I just have one more comment, and it's nothing too crazy, just unstructured playtime is something that resonates in my head from probably some education class I took way back when. And the issue at that time that I remember, and of course I'm stretching back there, how important unstructured playtime was. So as you were discussing this, I was like, so you're saying we'd rather not. It does just sound like playground management. I know when I was a kid, we played Foursquare. At some point, someone taught someone how to play Foursquare because the older kids would teach the younger kids how to play Foursquare or how to play Hot Lava Man or whatever else we played. I don't know what we did.
There's no one to teach them the games.
Yeah, right. At some point,
So
once
it's gotta
it
be
gets
an adult.
lost, and then it can be lost, right?
Yep.
So, but the whole idea was that the kids would learn how to negotiate some of the rules on their own. So I guess I was a little bit worried, but it just sounds like playground management to me.
And actually, Mrs. Muchnick, you and I have had extensive conversations about this when we were talking about full-day kindergarten, which I wasn't sure was, a grand thing for some kids because of the lack of just playtime. When do they just get to be kids? And you really helped me understand that the balance is there and the focus is there, and it's not, structured completely all the time. So thank you for that.
You want them to have fun. Got to teach them how to have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are some of, when I'm thinking back at my elementary years, some of the things I remember the most is playing on the playground during recess with my friends,
Yeah.
more so than what we were doing in class. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
I think it's important to know that time with the other kids.
Can I
Winston,
just
can you
make
change
a
it?
quick observation? Emily Brooks did just walk in, so you'll be able to do your comment at the end of the meeting? Yes? Okay. You're so welcome.
So I kind of covered, what law says, right? 48,900, some of them you can't suspend for, the desire for restorative practices, the implementation of MTSS, creating expectations, modeling expectations. But there's also the reality of what are students suspended for, right? And so law may be suspended for first offense if the principal determines that the student violated Ed Code 48900 A through E, or that the student's presence causes a danger or person. So any of these things that you see up here, students can be suspended and potentially put up for expulsion based on a single violation without maybe any of the other means of correction implemented. I will tell you that there are assembly bills coming into play that are looking to challenge that. And so, I shared with them just a few days ago, and so, that's something that we will be working through. Currently, that's not the case. I'm a firm believer in restorative and expectations, and sometimes they have to go together.
Yeah.
Right? It's always going to be restorative, and sometimes there has to be suspension as well. But we will be working together as we process through what some potentially these assembly bills could be looking like.
I was going to ask you, because I only can think of one kid that I had teaching that was really disruptive to the point, you couldn't calm him down. Like, what do you, because most kids I find you can kind of manage with classroom management skills, but what if there is a kid, no matter what the teacher does, no matter how organized that teacher is with classroom management, and they're still disrupting class, but they're not a danger to themselves or others? What can be done in that case?
So I'll touch base on this on the next slide, right? Okay. There's the opportunity for teachers can suspend for defiance disruption. There's also sometimes if a safety aspect is being created or in keeping other kids from learning, right? Those are all individual situations to learn at. With students that would be progressively getting, bigger, there need to be a behavior support plan in place, looking at and addressing how to best support them. But there are things that we can do for those situations, and we do utilize them when needed. So one of them is a type of suspensions and other means of correction, right? So we have teacher class suspensions. So Ed Code 48910 states a teacher may suspend any pupil from class for any of the acts in section 48900, including K, right? So including defiance disruption for the day of suspension and the day following. This is one of the things I've tried to clarify with our sites so that all sites are aware exactly what Ed Code says and the expectations of when that's utilized, what the teacher, what the administrator role is in that. So just to kind of give you, we're 7 weeks into the school, 6.5 weeks in. There have been 42 teacher class suspensions, right? So not a ton, right? But definitely shows that it is being used when needed. A teacher can suspend for 1 day or up to 2 days.
Yeah.
So let's just say a kid's in 3rd grade, and it's on a Wednesday. That could be a Wednesday and a Thursday. If it's in a 6 through 12 situation, let's just say it's a math teacher, they only have that student for one time, right? And it's a block period, right? A block period is an every other day class, so it's a single block period, right? A single block period equates into 2 class periods. And if I'm a math teacher and I suspend them from my class for those 2 periods, I'm not suspending them from the history class the next period, because I have the rights to my classroom, but I don't get to take it away from someone else's classroom. They would have their individual rights on that.
So when we hear someone say that this took away teachers' rights to suspend kids for disruption or defiance, that's actually a false statement, correct?
I would say we've made sure we clarify that teachers do have that opportunity.
They do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I
But I will
misunderstood
say this.
I thought they did.
Our teachers never want to do this. No teacher wants to have a kid out of class, right? So, I mean, I say 42. The teachers are working, right? They're calling home. They're working with the staff. They're working with the kid. They're trying to create a plan. Nobody wants their kid out of class. It does happen at times to make sure that the learning environment is supported for all students.
And I'd like to clarify a little bit on safety. I understand if a child is physically disruptive and other kids could be hurt, that, clear-cut case. What about the children who feel unsafe when another child emotionally dysregulates? Is that type of emotional safety also considered with this?
It depends on if it's a threat, right? So those are, if someone's acts an individual acts are outrageous, right? And impacting the safety. We just had one of these a couple days ago. In terms of a teacher feeling a certain way, other students reported that the act was making them feel unsafe.
Okay.
Yeah, there was discipline that extended beyond a teacher class suspension based on the actions and the environment that it created for the others.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I get a little clarification? So you say here that the A through E, a student may be suspended for a first offense, and this is Ed Code 48900. So I have the other sections here. So it goes A through E, and then there's K, and then it goes on L. There's a whole bunch more, is what I'm saying. And some of them, so I'm assuming these are things they cannot be suspended for the first time. And so, they say pervasive bullying, well, that would be not one act, but, hold on here. So what about?
So let me explain like bullying, right? So on a single act, like bullying is repeated patterns of behavior. So if it was if someone came forth with bullying and it's the first time it's being reported, right, then that would not be suspendable. But if it was a pattern, right, and it happened twice, and then interventions occurred on the first one, then you can suspend beyond that.
What if a student is being stalked by 4 kids and then the authorities keep telling them that they're not being bullied and that there is no threat? Explain that situation, because I'm really curious. Would that be considered bullying, or
So
is that
explain.
a kid is going to a junior high, let's just say a random junior high, and 4 kids follow him home and 4 kids assault him in the bike rack, and then the same 4 kids are harassing him at lunch. At what point does it become bullying? At what point do the authorities say, this is a problem?
I would say that situation should be looked at pretty deeply, right? And all accounts and the behaviors that lead up to it.
I hope so.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm sorry, I finally found, so I just saw a couple of examples. So knowingly receive stolen school property or private property, so that's beyond K. So that one could not get a suspension on the first offense, I guess. Possession of an imitation firearm, committed or attempted to commit a sexual assault.
So some of those things go in connection with another one, right? So a suspense, like let's just say the imitation. You can combine infractions, right? And so some things by itself may not, but if the harassment, intimidation, threat with a combination of that, that's where the codes work together.
So what about section N, committed or attempted to commit a sexual assault? So that's not.
So again, that would be, you can combine that with threats.
But not for, not.
No,
first
again,
offense.
because you would combine that with another offense. So that's
You
what
must
I
combine.
do is,
Oh.
yeah, so it's a combination.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you could suspend on a first offense of that because it applies to two
Because
different.
a sexual offense, there's a lot of variations of that, right? And so that terminology there could be a very minor one and something very extensive, but the same code, there's only so many codes. So it's the combination of the codes to make fit the correct discipline infraction.
And is there any distinguishing between the size? So you got a 6th grader who maybe has not hit a growth spurt, and an 8th grader who could be 16 years old by their looks and their physicality. And there's an altercation or bullying. Is there any, that rises things to another level? I'm just wondering if administrators are dealing with a situation in which an 8th grade student is picking on a much younger kid, is that ever taken into consideration?
I mean, I've done with a lot of situations with size discrepancies, right? And I think every situation's unique. I think, the situation that, you're kind of discussing, I've become pretty familiar with it. And I think there's some unique circumstances to it that.
Because a threat level definitely feels a lot higher for that 6th grade student.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of similar to this, right? And we're kind of going through this as we talk about elementary kids and some of the behaviors we're seeing. We have a 2nd grader who might be kicking their teacher in the shin. and that's not okay, and it hurts, right? And then not to say we have 17-year-olds kicking the shin of their teacher, but that would hurt as well. I think every situation has to take into account that we want all kids to be safe, we want all staff to be safe. There's no perfect answer for any discipline situation, specifically when it comes into, the word bullying or threats, because, there's a lot of videos, there's a lot of things, video footage, student statements. There's a lot of different situations you have to, take into account as you try to figure out what's happened.
Well, because when we look at A, it says caused, attempted, or threatened to cause physical injury to another person. And that's suspendable, I'm assuming.
Correct.
So I would think that a younger student getting stalked by older students and they're being threatened.
That definitely could fall into a suspendable offense. I absolutely agree.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no denying that. So then we get to other means of correction, right? So the one on the left, right, teacher class suspensions, those are teacher generated. And then we have other means of correction, conference, counselor, social worker, administrative support, enrollment in programs, anger management. One of the things that, that Joanna and my department is working on and rolling out to the sites is different type of learning modalities of growth, right? So let's just say two kids get into a conflict, right? They're gonna fight, they're almost gonna fight. Let's say they both get suspended. With the suspension, there's also a curriculum, right? That, it could be 30 minutes. It's them going through a curriculum based on anger management. Words of hate, right? And curriculum based on what do words of hate do, right? Trying to develop growth and capacity. So that's a big push, not only for the state, but our district, right? To make sure that we're providing the best supports possible to grow those areas. And then suspension, yes.
I'm sorry, I wanted to go back to the slide just for a clarification. Your suspendable things are possessed, sold, and furnished a knife or a dangerous object, unlawfully possessed, used, furnished, or been under the influence of controlled substance. Where does a mandatory expulsion come in? Because I know that that's...
Selling or brandishing.
Brandishing means actually threatening somebody versus just having it on your person.
And selling drugs.
So brandishing and selling then is mandatory.
There's other ones that we're dealing, that may not be mandatory, but we are working through some right now through expulsions and different criteria. I will add there's a layer of expulsions and support from people in the state level of attorney that are supporting students that are getting put up for discipline infractions that we've experienced this year. So there are continual layers that are making expulsion very difficult. I will say that. And again, that's not something we want. We never want kids to be expelled.
But
we're always looking. But to your point, there are infractions that are beyond what we want to have in our schools.
Yeah.
So the behavior management programs, did you say they are being offered at the schools, or do they go somewhere else for that?
The behavior management program, like the curriculum?
Well, you said they might need to be enrolled in a program for behavior management.
Like Carpe Diem?
Where did they go for that?
So we do have Carpe Diem, but what I was specifically talking about was when kids are showing behaviors that are anger or defiance or substance abuse, having a curriculum that supports that we have on campus.
Yeah, that's
right?
what I was wondering.
Where they can grow in their understanding, substance abuse, anger management, a restorative practice. Yeah. Administrators can suspend from 1 day to 5 days. No longer than 5 days, unless it's an offense that, like you said, potentially could put them into expulsion or a process of evaluating expulsion. So a suspension could be extended, right? So let's just say it's one of those that you mentioned, it's suspended for 5 days, and then there would be a meeting within those 5 days where the suspension was extended because expulsion was being evaluated.
Thank you.
That's how it would extend beyond 5 days.
Just a quick question about expulsion. So expulsion isn't really that you're kicked out of school and can't go anywhere. We have a place so that kids are continuing their education even when they're considered expelled.
Correct. There's David Long, That's a county school. Expulsion from a school is for 1 year. If it happens in October, it's through the end of that school year. Yeah.
Okay, sorry to go
Yeah,
off on
no worries.
a tangent, okay.
So I think this is a slide that I really want to emphasize, right? What are we doing to create positive environments for staff and students? Number one is to have high expectations for all, right? If we start with climate and culture, I think that's one of the greatest things about our district, right? Our belief in relationships, the importance of how people feel when they come to campus. That goes for staff, it goes for students, and it goes for community members. So our staff, we believe all students can learn. And when discipline is implemented or enforced, although not everyone is always happy about that decision, it's implemented to make sure that we are creating the best environments for students to learn, but also for that student to hopefully learn from the mistake and be a better version of themselves when they return. But we believe all students can learn. Secondly, just our staff, we want to partner with our community and our parents. We have 22,000 students, and potentially 50,000 parents. We want to partner, right? We know it's hard to raise kids. I have 3 of my own, and so we're here to help. And whether it's a discipline issue or it's a great thing on PTSA, right? When it is discipline, and we're coming from a lens as a staff, we want to create a plan for your kid to improve. And we want to continue to develop strong extracurricular programs to engage students. At the last board meeting, our student presentations from the high schools, it was mentioned how special the environments and the cultures are at our high schools. Yes. Specifically. That's unique. And I think if you really go out and you go look at other schools, we have some really great things going on. Kids want to be a part of our schools, and we are able to hold a high level of expectation, right? And we will continue to do that, and we will raise the bar of what we expect. And it continues to raise in terms of academics and behavior. Continue to nurture strong relationship with staff and students, right? We want to, I have staff support up here. We know that being a teacher and a staff member on a campus is extremely hard. The importance of the positivity from our staff is vital. We as a district office, and I know all of us together, we're trying to support our staff the best we can because it's important, right? The students need us, right? And us becoming the best version of ourselves every day is really important to that. And then tier 1 and tier 2, right? I don't want you guys to be scared off when you hear multi-tiered systems of support. I want that to be focused on expectations, modeling expectations, consistent expectations from class to class. You can think about the playworks, how that gets embedded into it, but it's all focused on learning, right? Everything we do, even discipline, student support, is focused on learning. And then the tier 2 aspect, again, when you hear that, it's just the focus on attendance, right? We did the attendance presentation last week. We just got done training all of our sites. Consistent implementation of when those reports get created, how they get to the case carriers, how do they get to the counselors, what's the follow-up when kids are not at school, when do we do a SART meeting, when do we do a SART meeting, when do we do a home visit, all those consistent protocols to get as many kids to school as possible. Because oftentimes the kids that are not coming to school need us even more than the ones that are. A big focus area this year for me, I'm a structure guy. I like policies, I like procedures, I like consistency. And so even with MTSS, when meeting with the schools, we're creating a legacy, right? Something that outlives the people in their positions. And so align consequences and restorative practices between the school district and the Murrieta Police Department. Dale and I, my director of safety, we worked really hard this summer to go through all of our systems, right? All of our forms, all of our contracts, and worked with the police department. I know they're excited about it, right? What happens on a first offense wax pen? What happens on a second offense? What happens on a third offense? Tobacco, our nicotine products. What happens when you're under the influence? We've dialed in all those. We met with our middle schools, our high schools, mid-July, with all the people who have really been working on that. We aligned the systems on that, got to the police department, and we're all on the same page. When the citation comes, what is the follow-up on that? Again, it's not for anything other than we want the best for our kids. We want them to know that our expectations are high. We don't want them taking part in those substances. And when you do, whether you're at this school, that school, 6th grade, 7th grade, 12th grade, all the expectations are the same. And I know that that's been a really accepted thing on our sites. It makes it very simple, along with our SROs who are happy to know that each school is the same. Align systems for transfers, transfer contracts, behavior contracts, no contact contracts, making sure all the language aligns correctly with the ed code, and they're all the same. They all say Murrieta Valley Unified School District because we're all one, and we're all going to have the same expectations for all of those. The incident statements, they're very important. When things come up, bullying, harassment, whatever it may be, that the same contract, the same statement is used at every school, right? That they get the same form, the same opportunity to share their story. There's the same follow-up expectations, and then they're saved and kept appropriately. But it's important that everyone had the same access to report what's going on to them. No-go list. The no-go list, sometimes that seems like a negative thing, but really what it is it raises expectations for attending games, dances, mainly at the high school. It becomes the dances and graduation and Disney grad night and all those kind of things. We have a strong no-go list implementation. We do have it at the middle schools. There's not as many events at the middle schools, so that's one of the things that Dale and I have been meeting with the middle schools is to up our game and can be really, really consistent on what are some other things at the middle school level that we can implement the no-go list to, again, raise the expectations, right? I believe wholeheartedly, I've seen this my whole life, I raise the expectations, people go up to them. So that's what we want to do. And align student handbooks. That we did that in the last couple years in terms of the student handbook at one school being the same as others with dress code, you know, just different policies and procedures, academic dishonesty. You know, one of the things that we're working on with academic dishonesty right now is AI, right? These all follow under discipline, right? The utilization of AI, how that's impacting education, and there's some significant roles that plays. Staff support.
Ryan,
Yes.
I want to give a shout out to our relationship with MPD. I think many people don't even know how brilliant and wonderful it is, not only with our SROs, but with the whole department. And I know that MPD has actually gone to national conferences and professional development training, and they presented on us, and they've received national recognition for our SROs and for just the role that they play. And absolutely, our SROs are on campus to prevent criminal activity. You bet, and they're 100% capable of that, but they do so much more. And I think our SROs in the room, you guys, I know that you know our frequent flyers. I know you know whose mom and dad are breaking up, whose mom went to jail, who's losing their house, who's having a bad day, and I know that you reach out to those guys. I know the guys and girls, those kids, and I think it's something that is so stellar, and most people don't even recognize it. In fact, I think some of our staff members don't even really realize how intense that relationship is, and I'm just so forever grateful for it.
It's super special. We couldn't run our events. That's one of the reasons we're able to create the cultures we have, right? We have 6,000 people. We have, you know, our SRIs know our kids. They know our parents.
name.
We have great parents that come to the game that also have pride in the community. So it's a collective effort. Staff support, right? We know our staff are put in a lot of difficult situations. We've spent a lot of work trying to make sure that we are supporting them the best we can. The Employee Assistance Program, the Workplace Violence Reporting Form, Teacher Support Network, the safety articles in both collective bargaining units, PROACT training, which is specifically designed for some of our special ed staff that have to deal with some difficult situations, the Registered Behavior Technician, some Keenan trainings, right? Just making sure that we are doing the best we can to support the growth in that area. And then lastly, safety. It's not last, it's number one, but I just want to emphasize our focus on safety. Darren Daniel has been leading our emergency management team along with myself and Dale, and we just are making great efforts and focus on aligning systems and evaluating the needs of every single site. We've already done a lot of work with making sure every single phone at every single school site, every classroom has a sticker on it that gets them access, how to call for help, where to call if you need the night patrol. If there's something in your classroom, you can push this number and it goes to multiple phones in the front desk. We've trained all of our front staff on the European sirens and the things that need to be in place to make sure that we are actively prepared for any emergency drill, and then focusing on the systemizing our drills, right? We have the Great Shakeout coming out in October. Dale's been working really hard with our sites to make sure that we're taking those drills to the next level. But we got a great emphasis on this, along with the emergency management system. We're looking to add that very soon in terms of how to relay information as quickly and efficiently as possible. And again, just lastly, our MPD partnership, we appreciate them. They're on call demand, right? You can call them at 6 in the morning, you can call Sergeant Huss, who'll answer the phone, and we'll get the information we need to get our schools safe. So that's all I have for the presentation. If you have any questions, you can let me know.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nice job.
Yeah, okay.
Moving on to F4, assignment of middle school teachers to teach in,
Two,
pardon me?
F2,
F2.
Personnel
Did I miss
report,
F2?
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
just turn a page.
Rather go to, yep. I was hoping to avoid that. No, I'm just kidding. F2 is approval of personnel report. Call for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. F3, assignment of middle school teacher to teach in a departmentalized classroom pursuant to Education Code 44256B for the 2024-2025 school year. This calls for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Now the infamous F4, assignment of middle school teacher to teach in a departmentalized classroom pursuant to Education Code 44258.2 for the 24-25 school year. This calls for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments?
Yeah, could I get a clarification as to, I think this is second middle school move. What's the specific move? Just out of
Mr. Reddick,
curiosity.
you want to address this one?
Sure. You brought this up a couple different times in terms of when you see these come through. At our junior highs, often we have multiple subject credential teachers or single subject teachers that will be teaching in the 6th grade area. So these are sometimes needed for those people with specific credentials to teach that subject.
To teach 6th grade? So,
In this
just out of
situation, I
curiosity.
actually believe this person has I believe this person's actually a single subject credential in English, but will be teaching probably social science and English at the same time.
Okay, in a specific class. Are we having a shortage of teachers in middle school, just generally, out of curiosity? Do we have a teacher shortage?
It's not a shortage. We always have pinch points in specialized credentials, but not necessarily a shortage of them. Oftentimes, it's the number of staff we have and the number of students we have and the sections we have to create. So that's why these are only one-year authorizations. So if we can resolve this with a fully credentialed teacher by way of a larger school or department, then we would approach that to be more specialized. But this is allowed within the ed code, but it's also done on a yearly basis.
And I can also vouch for Mrs. Deppner. She's amazing. Both of my children had her.
Good. Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. This is F5, a public hearing regarding the proposed adoption of resolution number 24-25-08, pupil textbooks and instructional schools materials compliance for fiscal year 2024-25. I hereby open the public meeting at 6 p.m. Do we have any comments or questions? Hearing none, I close the meeting, public hearing at 6 p.m. Quick meeting. F6, adoption of resolution number 24/25-08, pupil textbooks and instructional materials compliance for fiscal year 2024/25. This calls for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
We have one
Oh,
public
yes,
comment.
okay.
So should we do that now?
Let's see.
Because this was the last thing, right?
Yeah, this is the last thing.
Okay, so we have one public comment. So Emily Brooks.
Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you so much for letting me speak. I try to rush over here from work, but my daughter actually goes to school in Hemet at the Western Center Academy, and getting back in time is very difficult.
You mean you ran into traffic?
Yeah. Always.
Everywhere.
Right. Anyway, I'll try to keep this brief because I know everyone is ready to go home. I really appreciate the discipline presentation tonight. My kids have been in the district, well, my daughter not anymore, but my son has been in the district since kindergarten. And I've really appreciated watching as he's gone through how the schools have handled behavior issues. Clearly coming back from the pandemic, that was a learning curve for the kids. Again, I remember watching elementary students in second grade who'd never had to stand in a line before, and their poor teachers who hadn't really had to teach kids to stand in a line before because that was a skill they normally were taught, in earlier grades. And so I really do appreciate all the work that the teachers and staff have put in to kind of bring things back up to where we expect them to be. My son started middle school during the pandemic, and so that was a learning curve for me, having come from the elementary. And then when I was finally welcomed back on campus, it felt like night and day, and I was just appalled and overwhelmed by the kinds of behaviors I was seeing. But I think a lot of that, like has been explained, is due to the bunker syndrome, kids who just kind of lost hold with reality. But I also think a lot of that has to do with what they saw and what they might still continue to see from parents and people in the community. And so I just wanted to take the opportunity to come tonight and encourage everyone here to be role models for the kids, because they see us, they see the way we drive, they see the people running red lights, and they see the way we talk to each other and the way we talk about each other. And they're learning from that, right? And so how can we expect our kids to go to school and be respectful and not defy their parents when the model they're often seeing is people defying others, defying societal norms, sometimes here on the board trying to just defy the law, meeting after meeting trying to pass resolutions and hire law firms to pursue an agenda for political purposes that really does nothing for our schools, nothing for our kids, except set an example that rules don't matter, laws don't matter. So how do we expect it from these children if we can't even do it ourselves? And so please, in the spirit of improving our schools and bringing everything back to where it should be, let's just try to restore common decency, respect for one another, respect for the law, for the rules that we have, and support our teachers and staff with the awesome work that they are doing. Also, one quick comment. I think a lot of the behavior issues are only going to get worse if we allow our schools to become overcrowded. Overcrowded schools are more challenging to provide that discipline and oversight that kids need. How can you have 2,000 students eating lunch at the same time and not expect problems? So we need to expand those facilities, maybe be able to break up a lunch period, make the classes smaller, and then we'll be able to have those behaviors improve that we want to see. So thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Item H1, or I rather, adjournment. I call for a motion to adjourn the Board of Education meeting at 6:05 p.m.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any comments? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.